This is a planning video for White Sands National Park located in Alamogordo, New Mexico. We're going to walk through a little bit of logistics in terms of driving to the park and specifically some logistics if you are taking an RV, because we are always traveling by RV. And then we'll go through and show you plenty of video and different hikes and different recommendations for the park. And lastly, we'll talk about a couple of camping options you have for this park. So real quick, I always like to go through the logistics first. So this is my map of New Mexico, and sorry, it's kind of divided into two spots, but White Sands is located down here outside of Alamogordo. You can tell that this is a really old map because it's still called White Sands National Monument on my map. From Alamogordo to the entrance for White Sands, you're only talking about a 20-minute drive, so that's a nice short stretch. It's only about an hour all the way over from Las Cruces, so if you wanted to stay in Las Cruces as your base and then just drive out for the day, you could do that. We stayed in Alamogordo as our base and then just drove our Jeep into White Sands for the day. And in terms of next largest city, so you have Albuquerque up here, and if you're coming down, this is about a 3-hour drive. You'd actually probably come down and around this way. We actually came down and took this County Road 60 over by Salinas Pueblo Missions National Monument, and we checked that out and then worked our way down this 54 and then all the way down here to Alamogordo and stayed in this area. The other thing people like to do if you're coming down into this area is do a loop, and you can check out if you come over here to Carlsbad, or we actually took our big rig up through Roswell and then came down because we did not want to drive through Cloudcraft. But if you come along here through Carlsbad, we stayed over here, you can see Carlsbad National Park, and then you continue on this road and you can see Guadalupe Mountains National Park, and then work your way back over. So within, just a couple hours away, you have 3 national parks that you can check out. So definitely consider that if you're coming down here. A lot of people also like to go to Big Bend, but you're talking like a 4-hour drive south of El Paso to get down to Big Bend. So we did not do that on this trip, but we just did this in Carlsbad and Guadalupe. So now I'm going to show you kind of a detailed map on White Sands. So this is the map for White Sands. You can see here's the road 70. This is not Interstate 70, this is just the State Road 70. So this direction goes to Alamogordo, this direction goes out to Las Cruces. And so from the visitor center, there's literally just one road. You can check out the visitor center, and we're gonna show that in the video. And then you're literally driving on a road, and so it's paved for a while, although it is dusted with the sand, the gypsum sand that's on there. And then you hit a certain point where if you want to keep going, then you're just going to be on sand. You're literally just on sand. There's no like developed set road that you're taking to continue this out. And then you can see there's just a couple of hiking trails. You can play around on the dunes, but we're gonna show you a couple places where we hang out by the dunes. And then we did this Alkali Flat Trail out here. So we'll show that as well. This is the road heading into Sands Dunes. So this is that 70. You can see it's this divided highway. There's 2 lanes on each side. Plenty big enough if you're still in your rig and stuff like that. But unfortunately, there's not a lot for parking at actual White Sands. So once you get to the park, having an RV is going to be a bit of a problem unless you have like a small camper van or something. So I highly recommend staying in one of those cities and then taking another vehicle and taking that into the actual parking lot, because you can see here's the parking lot. You can see there's a few spots where they have this oversized for RVs. I guess there's a big rig there, so maybe there's a handful of spots, but not a ton. The visitor center had great information posted outside about the Dunes Drive, which is the main thing that you come here to do, when the park movie is showing inside, and then when their ranger talks were happening for the day. From the visitor center, you then start heading on the Dunes Drive. This drive is 8 miles. If you take it all the way out, it actually loops at the end, and then you come back out the way that you went in. You can see that we still have some paved road here. We're starting to see some of the hills and a little bit of the gypsum sand that makes up that white powdery appearance on the tops of the sand. And then you can see we're starting to get into more and more sand. And eventually this paved road will end and we'll just be driving on straight pressed down sand. At this point in time, you can still see some vegetation. So you'll see things like the soap tree yucca and skunk bush and some of those kind of smaller plants and some vegetation. And then that's probably where you're more likely to see animals. Like you can see foxes out here. They have different lizards and small mice. We did not see any animals during our time here, but we also spent most of our time further out on the sand. So now we're getting to the point where we're pretty much driving on sand. And so the sand is just kind of covering the ground. It's easy enough to drive on. You don't need any special vehicle. As you saw, there was an RV off there to the right. So it's definitely easy to drive. There is not any sort of four-wheeling or off-wheeling, off-road type driving here. So even if you've got your big powerful Jeep or something, you cannot go off-roading. So you absolutely still have to stay on that designated route. And along the way, there's a couple places where there's parking like you're seeing off here to the right. So you can just park in one of those spaces and then go and walk and explore the dunes. I always love parks where the kids can walk off trail because I feel like they just have so much fun in that type of experience. The same type of thing you can have at Badlands. I just love that experience because the kids just get to be free and roam around and play, and they love that. Okay.
Run!
If you're coming, be sure to bring some sleds with you. So these little circular sleds worked great on the sand. I think they might sell or rent these at the visitor station. We didn't pay that much attention because our campground that we stayed at actually loaned us the sleds. We were able to use those for the day. We didn't have to worry about buying anything. So that worked out well since we're probably not going to use them a ton after that. And we don't necessarily want to lug them around in the RV while we're going on the rest of our trip. So it was really nice that you can have some places where you can rent them, and check with your lodging options because at your hotel or wherever you're staying, they might have sleds available as well. Way to go. My kids could have spent the whole day sledding here. They had so much fun with that. So a little bit just about what you're actually seeing here. So the dunes here are made from gypsum. So that's the component that makes the sand, and that's why they're so white. So in comparison to what we have at the Colorado sand dunes, which are going to be kind of more that golden, more like your typical sand that you would have at a beach. The sand dunes here are this real powdery white. Now, the sand I felt here feels more like that hard, crunchy feeling you have from a real wintry, cold snow. So it's almost like hard and packed. And if you're at the top of the dunes, you really can walk on top of it, and it's packed in, and you're not sinking into it. Unlike the sand dunes in Colorado, which it's kind of like a 3 steps forward and 2 steps back type deal, where you have to really work to keep going because you're constantly sinking back into those dunes. I don't feel like it was the same case here. So it was a lot easier to walk along the dunes, even as you're going on the uphill, than you have with the Great Sand Dunes in Colorado. And if you forgot the sleds, don't worry, you can still just roll down the hills. You guys are like floppy little fish.
You okay? Why don't you guys pick a slightly different line next time?
I will say that the kids had an easier time with the sledding. They pretty much just glide down the mountain versus us adults kind of did a little bit more of sinking into the sand and having to kind of scoot ourselves along. Were you going for the tortoise record? I'd recommend staying kind of close to where you parked, or at least where you can still keep an eye on your car. not because we were worried about theft or anything, but just because you want to make sure you can get back to your car. The dunes really start to all look the same, and even those parking lots and the collection of where all the cars are start to look the same. So we tried to not stay too far away from where our car was parked. And it's always a good day when you can bury your sibling in the sand. And don't forget the sand angels. There's 3 spots in the park where they have picnic areas, and it's really nice because they have some tables where you can sit down. They have a little outside grill, and then they have these wind guards. So if it was kind of windy, or I guess they're sun guards probably too, because the sun is kind of beating down on you. We are here the end of October, so it's really not that hot. It's perfect. We're in shorts. I will tell you, by the end of the evening though, we were cold, because once that sun sets, it gets really cold. This is the parking lot for the Alkali Trail, which is the furthest point in on the route. You can see RVs could maybe get in here depending on how full the parking lot is. Road's a little bumpy though. This is a 5-mile loop if you do the full trail, and this is the furthest out that you can get in terms of the driving, and then really the walking and hiking out here. And Jeremy says the trail's pretty well marked, so you can tell where to go, because it can be pretty disorienting when you're just hiking out here on the dunes. Be sure you've brought plenty of water. The last place to fill up on that, by the way, is the visitor center. And be sure you're kind of looking back frequently and keeping an eye on where is that parking lot, or where's the other markers where you've been. Now, we bring a GPS. We have a Garmin reach with us at all times. So when we travel, we use this all the time, and it will perfectly plot out the space, and it's satellite run, so it doesn't require any sort of special signal, and we can always get a signal and get back on the path. But they have these markers that are along the trail, these big orange markers, and just keep track of which marker you've gone to. Look back so you can always see where that last marker is, and you shouldn't have a problem. You can also generally see a bunch of other people kind of walking around the dunes. And so the further out that you go, there's fewer people that you're going to have, but you can use that as a bit of a marker as well. In terms of footwear, anything that you're wearing is going to get sand in it. So the girls ended up going barefoot for most of this hike, and Jeremy and I have sandals on, and that worked out just fine for us. You also may have noticed that the girls brought their super soakers along with them. We didn't end up doing the full Alkali Trail, but we did probably go out a little bit more than a mile. And you can see by the time we really got to that mile point, there's hardly anybody else around us. So we really pretty much had the dunes to ourselves at this point. So there's very few people that will make the effort to kind of climb this far out, hike this far out, or perhaps they're just worried about getting lost or disoriented, and so they don't want to travel out this far. But it also means that we just had all this space to ourselves, so the kids could run around and shoot their water guns at each other, and we could enjoy a little snack. And we decided to kind of stick around and watch the sunset there from the dunes. White Sands National Park is actually surrounded by the White Sands Missile Range. And so they actually do missile range testing occasionally here, and they will close the road 70 that gets you from Las Cruces up to the park. So occasionally they're closed. I guess it averages about twice a week, and it's just for like an hour or two. So it's not like it's the whole day, but just so you know, you may want to check. I don't know if they have that on their website, or if you can call ahead, or maybe if you just show up and they say that they're closed, it might just be for a limited period of time. But that could happen on your trip. And here's that beautiful sunset we were waiting for. At this point in time, I was the only one with a long sleeve shirt, and everybody was starting to get cold because in kind of these desert climates, when that sun sets, it gets really cold. I mean, it can easily drop 30 or 40 degrees in the nighttime when that sun sets. So be sure that we didn't really plan on staying out this late. If you do plan on staying out, watching the sunset, just be sure that you have enough warm clothes with you because it can get really cold as you're trying to head back to the car. Also be sure that you have some sort of flashlight or headlamp because it's going to be really difficult to see and find your way back to the parking lot because you won't really have any lights to help guide you. White Sands National Park does not have any hotel or any RV or car camping options, so you will have to arrange to camp outside of the park. And like I said, we camped in Alamogordo. We stayed at the KOA there. We have a full review on our stay at the KOA here if you want to check that out. Other people also like the option of Las Cruces because it's a little bit of a bigger city and it's a little bit easier to jog on to either 25 or Interstate 10 when you're done with your White Sands trip and head on to the next location. So I hope this review was useful to you. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Feel free to ask any questions below. And you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at RV Homeschool for more RV travel videos, national parks, and visiting places with your kids. Thanks so much for watching.